Good evening, everybody. How are you doing today? Happy Workers' Day to everyone. Um, can you tell us where are you joining us live, or if you're watching a replay, just put in the comment section #replay. We are going live using StreamYard. So before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at streamyard.com/Facebook. My name is Sandra Akoshile, and I am joining you live from South Africa. And today, the conversation that I will be talking about with a special guest is I'm sure in South Africa you've heard whenever they're discussing in the news or on TV about Moody. So when I'm usually driving from work or in my car and I'm listening to the news, and I'm thinking, okay, who is this Moody? And is he a person, or what does he mean when he says we are now in a recession or we are in a junk status? So, for the ordinary person like you and me, do you know what it means when the country goes into a recession or a junk status? So I just need to make a disclaimer before we start that we are not financial advisors, but whatever we are saying today, it's from our experience and from our own research. So tonight I am joined by my young brother, Sasan. He's actually got a Facebook page, Sasan's Corner. He has started blogging because I believe my brother is very intelligent and he knows how to write about anything. So I'm going to hand over to you, Sasan, and just say welcome, because you are going to be telling us today about who Moody is and what it means for the country, for the ordinary person like me and you, to go into a junk or recession status.
All right. Okay, so thank you, Sandra, and good evening and welcome to everyone. Okay, so let's get straight into it. Now, firstly, as Sandra mentioned, obviously, I'm not a financial advisor, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm basically just going to explain,
Hello, Sasan. We seem to have lost you there. Okay, Mr. Sasan, I'm just going to give him a call to find out what's happening with his internet. Okay, can you come this side and let's do it together? Live. Okay, sit here. Yeah, you can continue because you're live already.
All right. Hi everyone. Apologies for that. Just a few technical issues there. Apologies once again. All right. So continuing from where I left off, like I said, I'm not a financial advisor, but basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you I'm just going to describe or give you a better understanding of when they talk about these guys, Moody's, your Fitch, or your Standard and Poor's. So basically, Moody's is what they call a ratings agency. Now, for you to understand what a ratings agency is, I'm sure most of you have done, or the majority of you have done, what are called credit checks. When you go to over the internet and maybe you want to take out a loan, or you want to take a phone on credit, maybe you want to take, be it a car or whatever, you get what is known as a credit check done on you. Now, credit checks, when it comes to individuals, your credit check is done by what are called credit bureaus. Now, when it comes to your credit rating agencies like your Moody's, for example, these guys, what they do is they do credit checks, but they don't necessarily do credit checks on individuals. So Moody's, what they basically do is, I'm sure we've all heard of when they say South Africa is going into junk status, or a country is going into junk status and so forth. And you're probably wondering, what does all this mean? So Basically, Moody's is a financial, these are financial service institutions. And basically, what they do is they assess the financial strength of companies and government entities, especially their ability to meet principal and interest payments on debts. So, to explain this in simple, what it simply means is to give an example of a country like South Africa. When you have a parastatal, like for example, ESCOM, what it does is whenever ESCOM needs to expand its operations, let's say they need to build a new power station, they need to increase capacity and so forth, ESCOM will approach financial institutions, obviously, to take out a loan. So obviously, these financial institutions, they obviously need to have security to understand, will ESCOM be able to return the loan that we're giving them? So what these financial institutions or these banks or lenders, what they will now do is they will now approach these companies like your Moody's. And what Moody's does is they will assess ESCOM's financial situation. And then obviously they now give feedback to say, ESCOM, are they in a position to be able to take a loan and repay that loan? So in other words, they assess ESCOM's financial strength and their ability to pay back a loan and obviously interest on a loan. All right. So this is where now all the ratings that we all hear about, this is where they come in. So basically when Moody's, assess ESCOM, they then decide to say ESCOM right now, depending on their financial performance, are they in a junk status? Obviously, junk status, what that now means is ESCOM, they are in a situation where if you guys lend ESCOM money, ESCOM will not be able to repay you, or they're in a situation where, they are not quite able to repay. Remember, I'm just giving an example. I'm not saying, ESCOM is in a situation where they cannot pay back loans. I'm just giving examples. So, with regards to these financial institutions that do this, we have your Moody's. Then you also have another one which is known as Standard and Poor's, and then you also have another one which is called Fitch. These are your three major ratings agency in the world. These guys, they are the big three when it comes to ratings. Now, when what happens now when obviously you have your financial institutions or your government institutions rather being downgraded? When they are downgraded, it means these companies that lend money to your parastatals like ESCOM or Transnet and so forth, they are no longer, these government parastatals will no longer be able to take out loans. So what does that mean if they're no longer able to take out loans? It needs government now needs to fill in that, that financial gap. So what does it mean if the government now needs to, that's where you find, or you hear government having to bail out ESCOM or having to bail out your Transnet. Where does that money now come from? That's where you now have your government stepping in and having to increase things like your taxes. And obviously, what this also means whenever you are downgraded, it also means your currency loses value. Why does your currency lose value? Obviously, because no one is no longer willing to give you money. And I mean, if no one is no longer willing to give you money or to loan you money, it means you're not good for investments. No one is really willing to invest into you. So obviously, that means your currency loses value. And what happens when your currency loses value? It means it now becomes more expensive for you to buy certain goods which are essential to your economy. For example, things like oil. It becomes very expensive for your government to buy fuel or oil. And what does that lead to? It leads to prices going up, which obviously leads to inflation. So, if that's where obviously you get your fuel becoming expensive, diesel and so forth. So the knock-on effect of that is obviously if diesel goes up, the price of bread goes up. The price of, basically everything goes up. Your electricity, the price of electricity goes up. The price of basic services goes up whenever you're downgraded, and obviously your currency loses value. So in a nutshell, with regards to what Sandra said, basically when you hear of these ratings agency, this is what they do. So in summary, like I said, a ratings agency, these guys, they look at the financial ability of government institutions. Okay, so they don't necessarily look at your government's ability to your government's ability to take out loans. No, it's government institutions, more like your parastatals. So like I said, your ESCOM, your Transnet and so forth. So when ESCOM approaches, let's say, a bank and they need a loan to do something, your ratings agency, your Moody, they are the ones who will now say to the lender, well, if you're going to be lending ESCOM money, given their current financial situation, they are not in a good financial situation, they won't be able to pay you back that loan. And that's when you have ESCOM, not having anyone lending the money, which then comes back to affect the ordinary man on the street, because government now has to find money to bail out Eskom, which obviously affects you because, like I said, your government now obviously might have to increase taxes. The currency is affected, which obviously means you now need more foreign currency to import certain goods which are vital for the economy. So yeah, okay. I'll hand you back to Sandra now. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Sasan. I think I'm actually learning a lot from what you've just given us as a summary. And I hope you guys are listening in. And if it's something that you're really interested, please just give us your feedback and what you think about what's happening in our economy. I just heard something today that in this year, it's projected that by 2020, almost 3 billion people would have lost, 300 million people would have lost their jobs due to what the crisis that is happening right now because of this pandemic, the coronavirus. So my purpose for getting Sasan here and for him to actually explain to the ordinary person how this affects us, in our homes, when it comes to us buying food, when it comes to us getting loans from our banks, or getting additional money on top of our credit cards, going into a lot of debts. What happens to us when the country goes into a recession? So my question, next question to you, Sasan, is what happens now that Moody has actually said to us we're in a junk or recession status? What happens going forward? And yeah, your opinion in what's going to happen in the near future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sandra. All right, so to answer that question, going back to what I said, let me try and make it obviously as simple as possible. You asked to say what happens, when, for example, Moody says, South Africa or has been downgraded, is now into junk status, right? To put it quite simply for the ordinary man on the street, for you to understand the impact when your economy is downgraded to junk status, the impact it has on you. For example, number one, you find that banks will now increase their premiums, which makes it harder for you to repay a loan. Obviously, because now we are in an environment where it's risky to give out a loan. Just to make it very simple, if you come up to me and you approach me and you say, can you lend me 100 Rand or $100, I'll pay you back maybe with 30 Rand interest. Because of the current financial situation you are in, if it is now risky for me to lend you that money, it obviously means I will increase the premiums with which you're going to pay me back, which obviously means I need more, right? Which obviously means for you to take out a loan, it now becomes very expensive for you to take out a loan. Also, because it now becomes expensive for you to take out a loan, it means with regards to, let's say, maybe you want to extend your property, you want to extend your house, you want to build more rooms on your property, you want to turn it into a double story or whatever, it means going to a bank to take out a loan is something that becomes a bit more risky for you. Okay, it means going to a bank to take out a loan is something that becomes more risky. So what does that also mean? It now means you now need to find alternative means or alternative means of finance. Also, what it now means is, remember, like I said, whenever your economy is downgraded to junk status, it means your currency loses value. Okay, I'm sure you would have noticed that around the beginning of March or end of February, beginning of March, around that period, beginning of April, you would have noticed that the rand depreciated immensely. I think around January, February, the rand was trading at maybe around 13 to 14 to the US dollar. And around March, April, you'd have noticed that there was a time when it actually traded to as much as 20 Rand to the US dollar. So that's a huge depreciation. Now, to give you an example of the impact that is, let's say, for example, if around February, if you had 130,000 Rand in your bank account as savings, at that point, 113,000 Rands would have bought you 10,000 US dollars, right? In a few weeks, when the rand depreciated to about 20 Rand to the US dollar, it means within that same amount, in a few weeks' time, would have lost almost half its value. Okay, it would have lost half its value, which means that at that particular time, you would have had to find something that, in other words, how can I describe it? You would have had to find a safer form of investment or a safer form of security to protect your savings. All right. So it means if you had kept your savings, obviously in rands, they would have lost value. Why? Because South Africa had been downgraded to junk status, which obviously means the rand lost its value. So these are the two major points that I've spoken about. Number one, it becomes increasingly difficult for you to access loans from banks. Why? Because banks have increased their repo rate. If you have taken out a loan and you are paying off a car or a house, the premiums or the interest that you're going to be paying on your loan becomes more. Number two, if you had savings, let's say in the form of liquid money in a bank account, your money loses value. I will take you to something that is obviously very close to me. I'm sure we're all aware with the situation that happened to our neighbors to the north, Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe experienced a situation where you had people who have worked for maybe 20, 30 years, let's say for example in civil service. Your grandmother, your grandfather, or your father or mother has been saving as a teacher. They've had 30 years worth of savings. And then because the Zim dollar lost its value, it means overnight your entire life savings, they're just wiped away just like that. Why? Because your economy has lost its value. It has been downgraded to junk status. So to go back to what to answer Sandra's question, this is the effect when your economy is downgraded to junk status. For the ordinary man on the street, it does come back to knock you. Number one, it becomes difficult for you to access finance. Maybe you need a loan, you want to start a small business. It becomes much more difficult for you. You approach a bank will tell you, my friend, the times we're in right now are very tough. If we are going to give you this loan, obviously the bank will give you ridiculous interest rates. Number two, it also becomes even more risky for you to approach a bank to take out a loan. Number three, if you do have money that's let's say in savings and whatnot, you actually every day when you look at your money, it's losing value. Because remember, why do we keep talking about the US dollar? Obviously, it's a much more, how can I say, it's a much more secure currency. Obviously, it's a very strong currency. So, a lot of currencies, they judge themselves against the US dollar. Okay. So, and then also the other knock-on effect, of course, is remember, like I mentioned earlier on, things that are general to a country, things like your fuel and so forth, the prices of those things also go up. Why? Because your government now needs to import those things. And because your government has a weaker currency, it means it becomes expensive for you to buy US dollars in order for you to buy oil, or in order for you to buy fuel, or in order for you to import things like medicine for your hospitals, in order for you to build roads, in order for you to improve your infrastructure in a country, it becomes much more expensive. So what it obviously means is, in a situation like that, you now have to be very careful with how you handle your finances, be it your savings and so forth. You obviously need to make sure that you have a more secure way of handling your finances, or alternative forms of finance, or alternative forms of investments, which are much more secure and which are not necessarily affected when your economy is downgraded. I don't know if that answer is good enough. Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm sure you're seeing us exchanging the microphone because Mr. Sasson had a break on the iPad, powered off. But nonetheless, I think you were able to get the message. Comment, please put your comments below. What is the one thing that you've actually learned this evening from what Sasson just taught us this evening? So what I love, one thing that you said is we need to start looking at alternative means to getting income. I'm always a believer that we should not rely on a 9-to-5 salary. Thank God it is there. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people right now, there are friends that I know that are actually going through retrenchment process, and they don't have a plan B as to what is going to happen this month. They are not going to have a salary at the end of the month. So my call to you is, we have an opportunity that allows you to earn even during this lockdown, that allows you to earn even during this crisis of the pandemic. And if you are interested to find out more about this opportunity, put your comment below, I'm interested, or you can send an inbox and I will be able to share the information. We have a webinar on Sunday, this coming Sunday, and we have a webinar coming through again on Tuesday. If you're interested to be part of this Zoom webinar, send me your details, either comment below or you can inbox me. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope we will be able to chat with you again tomorrow, where we'll be sharing more information about what's happening in the country. You guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you.